Hey, good afternoon. We are streaming live via YouTube. I'm officially calling the state of Georgia versus LaShonda Campbell Barnes for warrant number 2022 CW 55277 for the charge of murder. I have a second warrant number for 2022 CW 55278 for the charge of aggravated assault. And then a third warrant 2022 CW 55279 for the charge of possession of a firearm doing a crime. Because of the there's also a co-defendant in the case, and we're conducting the preliminary hearing simultaneously with case number 2022 CW 55280. That's the state of Georgia versus Armand Williams for the charge of murder. I have a second warrant number 2022 CW 55281 for the charge of aggravated assault. We have a third warrant number 2022 CW 55282 for the charge of possession of a firearm, arm and or weapon doing a crime. Those will conclude the charges against both Ms. Campbell Barnes as well as Mr. Armand Williams. The state is represented by ADA Cheryl Freeman. Ms. Campbell Barnes is represented by, I believe, is it Mr. Frank T. Smith? Is that correct, Attorney Smith? Did I get that right?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, and then Mr. Armand Williams is represented by Attorney Robert L. Booker.
Yes.
The state is ready to proceed forward with their case. You can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Cooper, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the matter of state of Georgia versus LaShonda Campbell Barnes and state of Georgia versus Armand Williams will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
I'm Detective Marco Cooper, employed with the Clayton County Police Department.
Sir, how long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
For 7 years.
While working with the Clayton County Police Department, were you assigned to investigate a case involving LaShonda Campbell Barnes and Armand Williams?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And the victim in the case, do you recall that victim's name?
Yes, it was Kentrey Johnson.
Okay. And did Mr. Kentrey Johnson have any type of relationship with Miss LaShonda Campbell Barnes or Mr. Armand Williams?
Yes, he had some relationship with Miss Barnes. I believe they knew each other through a mutual family member, and she would babysit, from my understanding, his grandson.
Okay. So on were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on November 26th of 2022?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Now, that particular day, did you go out to the location of 2593 Oslo Court in Jonesboro, Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. Before you arrived there, did other patrol officers arrive?
Yes.
Okay. And was that in reference to a person shot call?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
When you got to that location, Detective, please tell us what you learned.
When I got to the location, I learned that there was 2 people and a child, including the decedent, in the house. The one person, LaShonda Barnes, was upstairs with the baby. Mr. Williams, Armand, was in the kitchen area. Several officers were inside securing the scene. The decedent was laying face down in the foyer area with multiple gunshot wounds to the back and head area.
Where was Miss Campbell Barnes at this time?
This time she was upstairs in her bedroom.
And where was Mr. Armand Williams?
He was in the kitchen laying down on the floor.
Other than the 2 defendants, who else was in the residence?
No one else except for the baby, the child, who I believe was less than a year old.
Okay. Were you able to speak to anyone to find out what happened?
Yes, I had to speak with officers and getting written statements. I did not interview the 2 subjects inside the household. I did speak with the officers to get preliminary information and to process the scene. I learned that the decedent had came over and there was some kind of physical altercation between Ms. Barnes and the deceased. This altercation escalated until ultimately Mr. Johnson being shot and killed. We learned that there was a firearm on the ottoman at this time, with some rounds empty, shell cases in the foyer near the decedent, and some signs of a struggle in the household. What I mean by that is maybe a chair in a hole in the wall.
Were you able to determine where in the residence Mr. Kentrey Johnson was shot?
Yes.
And where was that?
That was in the foyer area near the front door.
You stated earlier that he had multiple shot wounds to the back, and I believe you said the head. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Were you able to determine from, any witnesses as to, was he leaving the residence at the time when he was shot, to be shot in the back?
It is unclear at this time, but it does appear that he was shot while he was on the laying face down, due to how some of the projectiles were protruding from his body.
Did Miss Campbell Barnes or Mr. Armand Williams have any injuries on their person?
Mr. Williams did not have any injuries. Miss Barnes did have some injuries, some redness around the neck, I believe a busted lip, and a little bit of swelling in the face area.
Did she indicate that she got those injuries this particular time?
Yes, she said that these injuries were caused by the decedent.
At what point in time were you able to get a statement from Ms. Campbell Barnes?
Once the scene was processed with search warrants and CSI and that procedure, we had went to Clayton County headquarters for a formal interview, in which we read the Miranda and interviewed them.
After reading Ms. Campbell Barnes, her Miranda, please tell us what statements she made.
Initially, she stated that the decedent had texted her saying that he was coming over out of the blue without warning. He came over, opened the door by the garage door, into the house. There was an altercation that ensued on the couch, which Ms. Barnes said that she had grabbed her .40 caliber pistol, shot the victim one time in the torso area. The victim allegedly said that he was going to kill her anyway. You shot me, I'm going to kill you. The altercation then led into the foyer area, in which she said she shot him additional times in fear for her life because he was choking her. She also stated that Mr. Williams, at this initial statement, came in after he heard the gunshots and asked what's going on. I then began to interview further and explain to her that the evidence that we have collected from the scene did not match up with this preliminary story, which is another firearm was collected in the sofa area, which was wedged in between the sofa behind the child's car seat. This particular firearm was a smaller firearm, a .380 caliber, which is also shell casings of .380 caliber on the scene, along with .40 caliber. The .40 caliber was a bigger pistol, a full-size handgun. Once we interviewed her again, she did state that there was an altercation between them two, that she shot him multiple times, and Mr. Williams also shot the decedent multiple times, and they continued to shoot him until he would no longer move.
Detective, just so I'm trying to be clear, because you said that the decedent was shot in the back. Was Ms. Campbell Barnes able to explain how she shot the decedent in the back?
Yes. One part of this interview, she did state that the decedent was grabbing on her leg with his stomach toward the ground, and she discharged her firearm. She was also able to demonstrate it in the interview room.
And just so I'm clear, was the decedent lying on the floor face down and Ms. Campbell Barnes and Mr. Armand Williams shot the decedent multiple times?
Yes.
You were able to recover the weapon that Ms. Campbell Barnes used?
Yes.
And were you able to recover the weapon that Mr. Armand Williams used?
Yes.
Okay. Did Mr. Williams make a statement regarding what happened?
No, he stated that he did not wish to be involved, and continued to state that he did not wish to be involved.
Did he just happen to be over at the residence with Ms. Campbell Barnes, or did he live there?
He was over there. According to Ms. Barnes on the interview, he was actually in the car waiting. Apparently he comes over there, but it's unsure if he actually lives there. She stated they are cousins from another state.
Was there any video or surveillance that captured any of the shooting?
Not of the shooting itself, however, there was ring camera at the garage entrance, which did show the decedent walk into the household. A few minutes later, walk the dog outside of the house, and then come into the residence once again and never exit.
Did the decedent have any firearms on him?
No.
Did the decedent have any other weapons on him?
No.
Did all of this take place in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, Attorney Smith, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Cooper, you were not the officer that wrote the initial police report, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, that was Officer Hernandez.
Yes.
All right. And in that police report, well, let me ask you, have you had a chance to review that police report?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to talk to Officer Hernandez about his observations on scene?
Yes.
All right. What was the demeanor of Ms. Campbell Barnes per Officer Hernandez?
He described, I believe, to be distraught.
All right. And what did you personally observe when you were on scene?
She was emotional, distraught.
All right. And initially, Ms. Campbell Barnes was noted as the victim in this case, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And at what point was it decided that she was no longer the victim?
After further investigation, sir.
All right.
Interviews and everything else.
All right. So describe what inside of these further investigations, because all of this occurred on the same night, correct?
Correct.
All right. So what in the further investigation made it move from her being the victim to now her being the assailant?
Well, what made it to this point was a combination of things, of evidence that we saw, such as multiple shell casings from 2 different caliber weapons. The initial statement that she provided with officers, the initial interview statement that she provided with me, and then telling us what really happened. So there's some deception. Another firearm located wedged between the car seat as if somebody was trying to conceal this weapon in the sofa. When initially stating that she was the only shooter, that she only shot the .40 caliber weapon. which was not true. The multiple gunshot wounds to the deceased in the back torso area, back of the head area, some projectiles were still intact, protruding from the decedent's chin area, face area, and into the carpet as if somebody was shooting downward angle onto the deceased. Just those statements, totality of circumstances of everything that we observed, we felt there's enough probable cause to make an arrest.
Okay, so let's go back. You said that there was a Ring video camera then, correct?
Correct.
All right, you reviewed that camera?
Not all of it. I have a portion of it, still undergoing search warrants for the remaining of it.
All right, well, you forwarded you forwarded copies of Ring videos from Ms. Campbell Barnes' email address to your email, correct?
Correct.
All right, and in the videos that you saw on the incident night, how many videos was it?
I do not recall, but I believe it was at least 3 or 4, to my recollection.
Right.
I can't recall at this time.
But at this point, you said that you've sent off for a search warrant to be able to get all of the videos, correct?
Well, there's another search warrant we have to obtain to get a full time span of the incident, which will better enhance understanding of what happened.
All right. So out of the 3 videos that you saw, what's the earliest point? What did you see in that first video?
The first video I saw, the earliest point was the decedent pulling to the driveway in his truck and entering the house.
All right. And what was the video after that?
I believe the video after that was the deceased walking outside with the dog, a small dog, on a leash.
On a leash?
Yes, or something to that matter.
Okay. And in the third video?
Of him coming back into the residence.
All right. Now, were these 3 videos all continuous?
I believe so. I don't recall, sir.
Do you recall the timestamp on that first video?
No, sir.
All right. Do you know how close it was in proximity to there being the 911 call?
I do not, sir.
All right. So you don't know whether that initial video was minutes prior to the 911 call or hours prior to the 911 call?
At this time, no.
All right. Now, at the point of investigating this, did you learn anything about the background of the decedent in this case?
Yes.
All right. What did you find out?
He was wanted for another domestic
I'm
incident.
going to object. That's not relevant for probable cause.
Your response, Attorney Smith.
Yeah, in this case, we're looking at the probable cause, whether my client committed the acts of aggravated assault, malice murder, as well as possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime. To be able to establish that, it would have to show that among all of the other factors that my client was the aggressor. And in our opinion, we're looking at whether my client was justified in acting in any type of self-defense, even for the purposes of a probable cause hearing, because as was stated earlier, she was listed initially as the victim in this case and not the assailant. And so I believe it goes still to that heart of the cause of the shooting.
Okay, I'm going to sustain.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Cooper, or Detective Cooper, if we are looking then at the story that was initially given to you, you stated that there was a demonstration of a pulling on the leg by the decedent and Ms. Campbell Barnes. Can you go into more detail of that description?
From my understanding, from what I recall from the interview, she stated at one point that the decedent did grab on her leg while she was up at this point and continued to discharge her firearm. The demonstration that she did in the interview was showing more body placement of the altercation.
All right. And you went into description of, shooting down on the body of the decedent, correct?
Correct.
Wasn't it true at some point inside of Ms. Campbell Barnes' statement, she stated that the decedent was on top of her, and her cousin, Mr. Williams, was firing at the decedent while he was on top of her?
That is correct.
All right. And isn't it true that the statements of my client was that he kept moving?
Something to that effect, yes, sir.
All right. Isn't it true that my client stated initially that the incident occurred in the living room with Mr. Williams not being present?
Yes.
All right. And that is the same location where the 380 gun was located, correct?
Yes.
All right. And isn't it true that at some point my client stated that she was being choked by the decedent while she was in that room?
Yes.
All right. And I know that you stated that there was visible signs of a struggle inside of that room, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you saw visible marks on my client's person, correct?
That's correct.
Did those marks appear to be defensive marks?
It's hard to say, sir, but there were definitely marks on her of injuries consistent with fighting. I can't per se that they're defensive marks or not, but they are injuries on her.
All right. And you personally observed those?
Yes.
All right. And isn't it true that my client stated that she, in the course of that struggle, struggled to be able to get to that 380 gun to be able to fire upon the person of of the decedent to get him to stop attacking her?
Yes.
All right. And isn't it true that after those shots were fired, she stated that then Mr. Williams came in and saw the two of them still struggling?
That's not what the statement she provided me with first, sir.
All right. That at any point she provide you with that statement?
Not initially. She stated that Mr. Williams came in after they had the altercation in the foyer area, from what I recall.
All right. So when you say the foyer area, let's just try to describe this. We already established that there was an area where there was a couch, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that's near the garage door?
Yes.
All right. In order to be able to get to the foyer, do you have to go through a kitchen?
Yes.
All right. Was it stated by my client that there was a struggle in the couch area?
Yes.
All right. Did she state to you that there was a struggle in the kitchen area?
No.
All right.
She stated that possibly. She stated that there's altercation leading from the couch area to the front door.
And to be able to get there, you would have to go through the kitchen. Is that correct?
Yes. You go to the kitchen, or there's like a little hallway that separates the kitchen from the living room.
All right.
Little wall.
So it's fair to say then that there was a struggle that was further than just one room, correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right. And when there were shell gun casings located, that there was at least some casings that were inside of the couch area?
No.
There were no casings located inside the couch area?
Only live rounds within the weapons, but no spent cases.
All right. Let me ask this. Did you personally conduct the sweep of the area in looking for forensic evidence?
No, sir.
All right. Would it surprise you if I told you that there were shell casings still found at the incident location after CID went through?
Now, anything's possible, sir.
All right. And you stated earlier that you didn't know whether Mr. Williams resided at the residence or not. Did you check the bedrooms to see if there were any indications of other individuals living at the residence besides my client?
No.
All right. As far as phones are concerned, were you able to obtain the phone of the decedent in this case?
I believe so. Altogether, we collected 6 cell phones, I believe.
All right. And have you had a chance to look through those cell phones to see if there's any phone messages or text messages that invited the decedent over to Ms. Campbell Barnes' residence on that evening?
No, sir. Search warrant was performed on the cell phones, I believe, earlier this week or last week, and I'm waiting for that to get processed.
All right. Were you able to view the phone itself?
Which cell phone, sir?
The cell phone of the decedent, Mr. Johnson. Were you able to view on the incident date the contents of his cell phone at all?
No.
All right. So right now you don't know the conversations that occurred between the parties on that incident date.
That's correct.
Did you find any weapons inside of the vehicle by Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
All right. And what weapons did you find inside the vehicle?
I did find a Glock handgun, which was recovered for safekeeping due to the vehicle being towed.
Just that one weapon?
Yes.
All right. And I think just lastly, do you have any knowledge as to whether Ms. Campbell Barnes has called the police previously about Mr. Johnson being at her residence unwanted?
Judge, I'm gonna, wait, Judge, I'm gonna object. That's not relevant with probable cause for these charges.
Attorney Smith, your response?
It's the same as last year, Your Honor. I believe it falls into the same category.
Okay, I'm going to sustain.
Thank you, Judge.
So you stated that you just did the warrant on the phones.
Right.
You have a warrant issued or pending for the Ring video?
Yes, for further data.
Have you talked to any neighbors?
No, sir.
Plan on talking to any neighbors?
Depends on the situation, sir. Yes.
You said it depends on the situation. Is there something that would make an ultimate determination one way or the other?
No, but it is still an open investigation. So it depends on the priority list of what I need to get done.
All right. Plan on having any of the shell casings or bullets processed by GBI?
Yes, sir. That's been submitted.
I need a memo from you.
Anything else pending with regard to your investigation?
Just GBI testing and further search warrants.
All right. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney Booker, your witness.
Thank you, Judge. And I'm going to keep in consideration we're here for probable cause, and I'll try to stay on the track. Mr. Smith's already asked a bunch of questions, so I don't have as many. Good afternoon, Detective Cooper. My name is Robert Booker. I represent Armand Williams. I just have a few questions for you, okay?
Okay, good afternoon.
All right. It's your testimony that the victim in this case, Mr. Johnson, was only shot in the rear of his body. Is that correct?
That is not correct, sir. The autopsy is still pending, so I'm unclear how many times or where exactly he was shot at. But from what I saw, I did see some to the rear. Some may have been to the front. I'm not clear at this time.
So you're not able to testify there was just shots in the back. Could have been shots in the front and back.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know how many times he's been shot?
Unknown, sir.
Okay. were you able to tell as far as the proximity, as far as how far the shooter may have been, as far as closeness to the person when they shot him?
No, sir.
Okay. And was he shot primarily in the upper body, lower body, or where was he injured at?
Primarily the upper body. I believe there was 1 or 2 wounds to the lower extremities.
Okay. And were these injuries through his shirt as well? Like, was he wearing a shirt and clothing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so ultimately you were called out, you got a 911 call from Ms. Campbell Barnes, right?
Yes.
Was she the only person that made the 911 call?
I'm unclear at this time, sir.
Okay.
I respond after the officers get there.
Okay. Once you got there though, Ms. Campbell Barnes was present, and Armand Williams was both present, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Johnson, you indicated he was about a foyer at the front of the house,
Yes,
and he was face down at that time. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Was he deceased at the time when law enforcement first got there?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that Mr. Johnson came over because he had a grandson there. Was the baby that was there, was that his grandson, or was that not related to this case?
From my understanding, that is his grandson.
So the baby was his grandson?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Mr. Johnson, you have any idea how old he was?
I have it on my notes, if I can recall. Mr. Johnson was 43.
43?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you get there, he's on the ground in the foyer. Miss Campbell Barnes is upstairs. So it's a 2-story house?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a single detached house or a townhouse?
It's a single detached family residence.
Okay. And Mr. Johnson's vehicle, is it parked at the end of the driveway?
It is parked on the street in front of the driveway.
Okay, as if so if someone wants to get in and out of the driveway based on how the truck is parked, they can't get in and out of the driveway, can they?
That's correct.
Okay, so it blocks in the driveway.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So his truck is blocking in the driveway. Mr. Williams, where is he at in the house when law enforcement gets there? In the kitchen, you said?
He's in the kitchen laying down on the kitchen floor.
Okay, so he's okay, but he's laying down on the floor.
Correct.
He's upset.
I'm sorry?
Is he upset? Is that why he's laying on the floor?
I don't know. He
Okay.
didn't appear to be upset, but Alex, I don't know, sir.
Okay. All right. Now you got there. Tell me where you found how many shell cases. Based on the report, it says that there were 9 shell casings found in the house. Is that accurate? Or I'm sorry, 11 shell casings found in the house. Where were those 11 shell casings found?
I can recall on the evidence sheet. Let's see.
And while you're looking for that, this is all being recorded by body camera as you guys are going through. And somebody from CSI came in and measured and recorded everything that was collected, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe the evidence was collected in the foyer area near the decedent.
So all 11 shell casings were collected near the decedent.
Yes.
Okay. And were pictures taken before the decedent was moved, before any aid was attempted to be rendered as well?
Yes.
Okay, so no one attempted to render aid to him, is that correct?
I don't recall, but I don't believe so. I believe he was already passed on.
So paramedics didn't come and they didn't do anything to destroy the scene, correct?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay, so you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So based on your notes, all of the shell cases were found right there where Mr. Johnson was found, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what caliber were those shell cases?
We had 40 caliber and 380.
How many 40 caliber?
I believe 7 or 8. 8.
8?
Yes.
Okay. And so that being that there were 11, I'm not great with math, but there were 380. caliber rounds?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Believe so.
Is that what your notes show?
Well, according to this, it says 4, but I'm not sure which ones are live rounds or which ones are not. According to his inventory sheet, I have to look at the CSI report.
Okay. And the 380, that's an automatic weapon, not a revolver, right?
Yes,
Okay. All right. And which of those weapons did Mr. Williams fire?
they're 40 caliber.
He fired the 40 caliber. And how do you know that?
Because Miss Barnes had told me.
Okay. All right. Did you ever speak to Mr. Williams and get his statement?
Yes.
Okay. And did he tell you he fired the 40 caliber as well?
No.
Okay. Where was the 40 caliber found in the house?
It was found on the ottoman in the living room where the couch is at.
Okay. And where was the 380 found?
It was found wedged between a sofa behind a car seat.
Okay. All right. Was Mr. Williams or Miss Barnes, were they checked for gunpowder residue?
Yes,
Okay. And what was the test? What did it come up with?
that is still pending.
Okay. And was there any blood spatter or anything like that on their clothes?
I do not recall at this time, sir.
Were they checked for blood?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
so.
So you obtained their clothes and their shoes?
No,
Okay. Do you know if they were checked?
I do not know.
Okay. All right. And as far as defects, so your opinion is that Mr. Johnson was shot while he was laying down on the ground. Is that because there were bullets underneath him?
That is because of how it appeared from looking at the projectiles protruding from him, and some projectiles still intact inside the ground under him.
Okay. As if they went through him into the ground and remained there?
Yes,
Okay. What type of floor was this, a hardwood floor?
this was a carpeted floor.
Were there any other defects in the house other than in the floor, any walls, windows, anything like that?
There was one wall near the decedent with a some damage to it.
From a bullet?
No,
Okay, what, do you know what caused the damage?
no,
Okay. You indicated, and I'm almost done, you indicated that there was some type of physical interaction, fight or something that happened. Do you think that wall defect came from the fight?
it may have, yes, sir.
Okay, and who was the fight supposed to have been between?
Between Miss Barnes and Mr. Johnson.
Okay. And Ms. Barnes had injuries that were indicative of a fight, right?
Yes, sir.
And there was a pretty big difference between Ms. Barnes' size and Mr. Johnson's size, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And pretty big difference between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Williams as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything else that they did the couch, for instance, have any blood on it?
Can you repeat the question one more time, sir?
The sofa that she said she was sitting on, was there any blood on that sofa?
I do not know, sir.
Okay. Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
ADA Freeman, any redirect?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
Okay, Attorney Smith, do you have any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Attorney Booker, do you have any witnesses?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
Okay, ADA Freeman, you ready for closing?
Yes, Your Honor, the state waives opening.
Okay, Attorney Smith.
Your Honor, I know this is not the trial of the case, and.
Oh, it's not.
I would have had a lot more questions, Your Honor, trust me. But initially, in this matter, my client was listed as the victim in the case. somehow during the course of this investigation, which seems to be still very open, it has changed. The investigator, doesn't even have the conversations between the decedent and my client on that particular evening. They're charged with malice murder, which gets to the extreme. I don't believe that the state has at least met the burden for malice murder. Maybe a lower homicide than that, but I don't believe that the state has met the burden for malice murder. And so the court's going to bind this over, which I suspected the court would. I would ask that the court reduce at least the charge of the malice murder in doing so.
Okay. Attorney Booker.
Judge, being that we're just at the preliminary stage and obviously not trial, I submit just on the argument and evidence that's been presented to the court.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
A. Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. The only thing I would say regarding Attorney Smith asking for a reduction in the malice murder, Detective Cooper testified that his client, Ms. Campbell Barnes, as well as Mr. Armand Williams, fired multiple shots into the decedent. And so, given that, Your Honor, I believe that the malice murder charge regarding Ms. Campbell Barnes is certainly appropriate at this time. And we are asking that all of the charges regarding both defendants be bound over to Superior Court.
Okay. Based upon the evidence and testimony presented by the parties, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over all three charges against each defendant, in this case specifically for Barnes, for Ms. Campbell Barnes, the charge of murder, aggravated assault, as well as possession of a firearm and a weapon during a crime. Also, with respect to the co-defendant, Mr. Armand Williams, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over all three charges to Superior Court of Clayton County for the charge of murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm and or weapon during a crime. I want to thank both parties for their presentation of your case. You did an excellent job. And that will conclude the preliminary hearing for Mrs. Campbell Barnes as well as Mr. Armand Williams. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. And may Detective Cooper be excused.
Yes.
Thank you, Detective.